We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's February 20th here in Seoul. I'm Shin Yoon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Chiji.
Good morning.
Happy Tuesday. And Im Sang-hyuk.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. To reduce the amount of car accidents caused by seniors, a few provinces in Korea have decided to increase the financial subsidies given to those aged 65 and up who voluntarily give up their driver's license. Gangwon-do and Gyeonggi-do provinces, for example, have decided to give triple the amount from what they've distributed before to around $225. Due to a rapidly aging society, at least 42% of those who had a driver's license in Korea were aged 65 and up. But another survey found that 7 out of 10 senior drivers were not willing to surrender their licenses, citing convenience reasons. And if you're a fan of Fubao, the first ever giant panda cub born here in Korea, you better hurry up and go to Everland. The theme park has decided on the last day that visitors can see her before she has to return back to China. It's March 3rd. After then, Fubao will be cared for in a separate space for a month before she's set to go to the Giant Panda Breeding Research Center in Sichuan Province. And it's customary for all giant pandas based abroad to be returned to China for breeding before they turn 4 years old. And we're going to our last story with one of the biggest local headlines. Doctors nationwide are going on strike against the government's medical school admission hike. But the Korean Nursing Association is standing strong alongside officials and has agreed to not leave hospitals. It has even formed a task force to act accordingly once hospitals cannot effectively manage patients due to a lack of doctors on site. And we've already been seeing a lot of trouble and chaos at hospitals from this morning, especially since doctors from the top 5 hospitals in the country have walked out. Pre-planned surgeries have been cut by half. Patients have to wait indefinitely to rearrange a time with their doctors. And last week, the KNA has made it clear that the 650,000 nurses in the country it represents are expanding the medical school admission quota. And this measure is set to kick off next year and gives an extra 2,000 slots to aspiring med school students. So here in the studio, we've been covering this developing story for a while now. I remember talking about it with you, Sang-hyuk. But from today, we've actually seen some collective action from some thousands of doctors in the country. They've just literally walked out. But there seems to be a discrepancy, right, with Korean medicinal doctors, nurses all in for the government versus doctors, residents, fellows not really being for this decision. What do you think about the discrepancy?
Right, so for doctors, I think their major concern is the hindrance in the quality of the medical services once the number of doctors goes up here in Korea. But for nurses, I think it's a matter of quantity than quality, because I have a friend who's working as a nurse at a general hospital, and she said that once there are just so many patients to treat, then she often skips her meal, and there are often some nurses who have to do night shifts. So I think it's really obvious that the Korean Nursing Association advocates the government's decision to raise the cap for the entrance to the medical schools. And I think, to be honest with you, when we think about the doctors and nurses, the biggest difference is that doctors, they are considered the most highly paid jobs here in Korea, whereas nurses have less income compared to their excessive workloads. So I think these kind of low pay and excessive workloads has driven the Nursing Association to advocate for the increase in the medical staffs.
And it's nothing new. For a while now, we've seen a lot of people from the medical personnel front talk about how doctors, compared to nurses, have a vested privilege, per se. And they seem to be the dominant power source compared to any other medical personnel, which is why it's a bit understandable that nurses are standing inside of the government. But at the same time, they're also advocating for their rights to be protected as well. Because as you mentioned, we are seeing quantity there, but quality care is another matter. Now, switching gears, what do you think about this developing story, Ji?
Well, it's a very well-established fact that we have a shortage of doctors here in the country. In fact, in 2021, we had less than 3 doctors per 1,000 people, including doctors of Korean medicine as well. And this ranks its second lowest among OECD nations after Mexico. But despite that, medical school enrollment quotas have remained frozen since 2006, and Korea Korea is reportedly the only country where doctors engage in collective action like these to block the expansion of medical personnel, even when globally there's a trend towards increasing the number of doctors to cater to the aging populations. And the reality of doctor shortages is something that doctors themselves would understand the most, actually. But then they're in the front line and they're supposed to understand it the most. And despite that, all they're saying is that they want to earn more money. That's the only explanation behind why they're opposing the expansion of the number of doctors. And they're also arguing that this will lead to patient harm and the
confusion.
Yes, confusion and decrease in the quality of medicine.
And this story is garnering a lot of attention, not only domestically, but abroad as well, because as Chihi mentioned, we've seen other countries like the UK, Japan, Germany, they've already been expanding the amount of medical school students and the admission quota, given the fact that we are seeing a rapidly aging society. But some viewers might ask them, why isn't Korea allowing that? Why are doctors all doing this collective strike? And the reason being is that doctors are saying that South Korea already has the most premium, top-notch quality care healthcare when it comes to treating its patients. We're already seeing the per capita visit exceed 2.6 times in the OECD average. We're second ranking in the world right after Japan. So you can see that doctors are saying already, if we just maintain what we have right now, we'll be able to continue with the high premium service that we're giving out. But whether this will be sustainable, given that South Korea will head into a super aging society, is another question of mine that we should keep into consideration. But in the meantime, let's now switch gears to our main discussion topic of the day. Subscription services have expanded over the years from OTT platforms all the way down to grocery markets. And our generation, also known as the thumb generation, is seemingly leading the subscription economy with our high level of familiarity with e-commerce. So Chi, why don't you start our discussion off today by talking about the various e-commerce and subscription services out there, and especially point out how popular it is among the younger generation.
Sure. So first of all, subscription services, they have come a long way really from their traditional form of regular delivery services, because today subscription services include digital content, of course, and even convenience services such as laundry, cleaning, and trash collection, as well as luxury goods like cars and high-end products. And according to a recent survey, it revealed that 3 out of 5 consumers have used subscription services, and the younger age groups tend to use them more, with 3 out of 4 in their 20s having used them before. And among these users, the MZers have the most experience with the subscription services, particularly in content and food and beverage, which we'll talk about in more detail later on, even home appliances and household goods as well.
Exactly, and I believe more brands and companies are well aware that launching a subscription service is definitely an effective way to catch the attention of millennials and Gen Z consumers. That's why the type of services we can receive through subscriptions has been expanding. Now here in the studio, based on your research, what was the most unique or fascinating subscription service that really caught your attention?
So other than Netflix or Amazon Prime, which are already well known to the general public, I recently came across this very unique subscription plan that is the car rental subscription plan. Now, depending on the monthly bills, you can drive diverse cars within a certain period of time. And if you pay more, then obviously you can drive fancy and expensive cars like Mercedes-Benz. Now, then you may think, what's the difference between the previous rental car system and the newly subscription plan? Well, the previous system is actually the contract period is really quite long, from like 4 to 5 years, which can be burdensome to some young people. However, this new subscription plan, the contract period is only like 1 or 2 years, which could be beneficial for those who are young. And also, depending on your payment, you can drive diverse types of cars. And this is actually getting a huge popularity from the Gen Zs, because they are the ones who are really sensitive to the trends. So this week, you can drive the old-fashioned Hyundai car, and next week, you can drive the newly announced cars from Kia. And also, another example could be the Gihu 동행 card, or in English is climate card, which was recently also announced by the Seoul Metropolitan Office. Now, if you pay about like $35 to $40 a month, you can use the public transportation here in Seoul without limits. And I think this is a good news to those who commute to work every day. It will save a lot of cost for your transportation.
So I see you were really interested in the transport-related subscription
Right.
services. What about you, Tihi?
Well, I thought it was really interesting how the popularity of whiskey among millennials and Gen Zs has led to the rise of subscription services that offer a 10% discount on the purchase of 3 bottles of whiskey every month. And also, there are various services that even deliver traditional liquor and even customized underwear, jewelry, and even more. And there are even subscription boxes that cater to different hobbies and interests by sending relevant products to their subscribers. And since the pandemic, as you've seen earlier in the VCR, flower subscription services have become increasingly popular as well, especially among MZers who are into gardening as well. Now, these sort of service that delivers planters and seedlings to MZers who are interested in growing vegetables at home was introduced a few years ago. And so as more people adopt pets as well, there are subscription services for pet food and other nutritional goods. They've become also very prevalent. And nowadays, there are even subscription services specifically designed for single-person households. Yes, so there are things like foods or vegetables being delivered in small portions to cater to the needs of individuals living alone.
So I see companies are well aware that we're going to build a sort of brand loyalty or a company loyalty as long as they meet the demands, especially our demands when it has to do with convenience.
Right.
So what about you guys? Are you guys the type to subscribe to different services?
Well, before I used to subscribe to an economics newspaper, but I stopped because I didn't want those physical papers piling up at home. So nowadays I prefer subscribing to the digital content. But other than that, I've also subscribed to a laundry service myself as well, where I pay a monthly fee to get up to 7 clothes dry cleaned every month.
That's really nice.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, and the service even provides me with a portable wardrobe that I can keep outside my door so that the delivery people can collect my laundry from there. And I also subscribe to bi-weekly chicken breast. So I would get packs of chicken every once in 2 weeks. And I also am subscribed to the most commonly used delivery app here in the country to just reduce the cost of delivery fees. as
Yeah,
well.
and I think a lot of our viewers who are living alone here in Korea can relate to the subscription services that you're attached to
Yeah.
right now because it has to do with your cleaning,
Exactly.
your daily eating habits, and also your chicken breast. I mean, it's like a little tank of protein that you need per day. What about you, Sang-yeol?
So unlike Jihi, who seems to be interested in proteins, I do not have any significant subscription plan right now going on.
Okay.
So I don't even subscribe Netflix.
What?
So I think this has to do with my personality because I'm the type of person who can easily get bored with the things I do. So there was a time I used to subscribe Netflix, and for the first 2 to 3 days, it was really interesting, and I was really excited to see numerous content just by logging into the application. But after a week, I got bored as usual, and so I decided to cancel the subscription plan because I realized that the payment was already being extracted from my credit card
Right.
without even being realized. So it can be a waste of money if you don't periodically use certain kind of services or products. And I believe there are many Gen Zs out there who are like me, who do not use the regular services regularly
Right.
and who can get bored easily. I'm not sure whether you guys can relate to this, but whenever I see movies or films, I usually go to YouTube and search the movie's name. And there are many YouTubers out there who provide us the videos of the 15-minute short
Right,
clips.
the shorter
Yeah, it's really
versions.
convenient for a person like me.
Exactly.
So, yeah, but these days, actually, I'm thinking about subscribing a book platform because it's quite embarrassing, but recently I haven't read much, and it feels like that my literacy skills are going bad. So just to raise my reading skills, I'm thinking about subscribing one of those platforms offered by the bookshops, and they also provide you with ebooks, which is really convenient if you have tablet pads.
Exactly. So it's great that we have both of you here. We have one that subscribes to many things, including laundry, all the way to chicken breasts, all the way to not subscribing to even Netflix, which is really a common OTT platform, one of the biggest giants here. But at the same time, I think you guys are putting a really good balance, and which is why I think it's now time to ask our viewers then if they're also a big fan of subscribing to different services. Let's take a look at the screen to find out what 3 of them had to share with us. Starting with Ramsey. Ramsey said primarily for OTT platforms. As I've really enjoyed watching TV ever since I was a kid, having access on these platforms is such a delight as I can catch up with my favorite show with flexibility. Recently, I cut my subscription for unlimited cinema as my viewing patterns changed during the pandemic. Leon said, I subscribe for music streaming to Spotify. I'm generally satisfied because I appreciate the extensive library and personalized recommendations. For video streaming, it really depends on what new shows I want to watch as different streaming services offer different programs. Benny said, I've been subscribing to Netflix for almost 3 years and am satisfied for my family to catch up on international films and Korean content too. So I guess most of our viewers are hopping onto this subscription service trend. But to better find out why our generation is leading this type of trend, we're going to include an expert specifically related to economics in our talks, so stay tuned for a live interview. We're now going to include an associate professor of economics in our talks. It's Ho Jun-young from Seoul University here in Seoul. Welcome, Professor Ho.
Thanks for having me here.
All right, so let me ask you the first question. Why do you think our generation prefers subscribing to a specific service compared to older generations?
There can be many reasons, but I can take 3 primary reasons for that. The first one is like compared to the previous generation, like baby boomers or Generation X, MZ generation tend to value more practicality and experience over ownership. This is partially because MZ generation has grown up in environment with abundant access to education, food, and housing compared to the baby boomers and Generation X. The second reason is the development of information and communication technology, so-called ICT, and digital transformation that the younger generation is familiar with. And the last reason might be the outbreak of COVID-19, which has been the game changer in consumer lifestyle patterns, such as staying at home and remote work, resulting in an expansion of subscription to various services.
I see. Well, Professor, this seems to be a global trend, though, but are there any specific traits confined to the younger generation here in Korea when they subscribe to different services?
Interestingly, in Korea, most single-person households consist of individuals from MZ generation. So accordingly, many companies are targeting this market by offering a greater variety of subscription. A primary example is food for single person, but it is not just for food. It also includes laundry service, alcoholic beverages, and even flowers that Jihin mentioned before in this program. So this is kind of very interesting trend in Korea.
Okay, so Professor, do you think that we have anything to be aware of when we subscribe these kind of platforms?
I think there are like 2 things we should be careful about when using subscription services. One should be careful about so-called dark nudge, a term combining nudge, meaning pushing someone to do something, and dark, referring to negatively. So it signifies manipulative techniques that induce irrational purchases for individual. And moreover, despite similar business models, the product and services offered vary from company to company, leading to difficulty in deciding which subscription to opt for various choices. So, for example, when you see the product and compare with your hand, it is easy. But when you do the subscription services, you cannot easily compare between those. So.
I see. So those are some things that we should keep out in order to be smarter subscription service users out there. Thank you so much, Professor Ha. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and as a final note, I would like to ask our panelists to share their own personal hacks or tips on how to be better, smarter subscription service users, starting with you, Chi, given the fact that you are subscribed to many services.
Well, I would recommend all the potential users out there to, first of all, remember to take advantage of the free trials that you can choose to really determine whether a service is suitable for your needs and convenient to use. And also make sure to do a lot of research and compare prices to ensure you're getting the best value for your money. For example, I previously said that I subscribed to the laundry service, a monthly laundry service, but later I realized that I didn't need to pay a high monthly fee to get up to 7 pieces of clothes dry cleaned every month. It was more cost effective for me to pay only when I had items that needed to be dry cleaned. So therefore, I just want to tell you to make sure to calculate your expenses carefully to avoid wasting money. And just like Professor Ho said, make sure that you don't fall for the dark nudges and do engage in illusional purchases. So do your research and calculate well.
Exactly. And may I add on, I'm also a victim, or actually maybe I'm the culprit of this habit because it's so convenient, right? Especially because with the swipe of the phone, you can be subscribing to different online and offline services. And while I prepay for my free trials, I sometimes forget that the trial is over. And later on, when I'm paying my credit card bills, like 2-3 months later, I realize, when did I spend this extra $10 to $100 for a service that I'm not even using?
I feel you.
Exactly. You always have to be aware about where your money is going, especially since it's so convenient to do. But what about you, Sang? You said you're interested in possibly doing a subscription for an ebook platform, but would you have any tips for people who are doing it right now?
So as I mentioned earlier, and like you said, if you do not have the confidence to use that certain kind of services periodically, then don't subscribe in the first place because that could be a real waste of money and time. And just like Professor mentioned, it actually disrupts your ability to discern whether which kind of product is good or bad. So I think if you are the person like me who really gets bored around things easily, and if you easily forget about the things, then I think then subscribing certain kind of platform will not be good. And also, once you subscribe a certain services, you get this pressure that you have to use the service regularly, which is stressful, I guess. But I do acknowledge that these kind of platforms provide you a wide variety of options, and it also has the technological algorithm system, which recommends customized services to the consumers. And I think this is really efficient when we think about just skimming through the internet to find the right platform. I think just signing into these kind of applications can be worthwhile.
Exactly. So do your research. Make sure not to be swayed just because it's a new consumption trend. Do something that's good for you. Now, in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Choi Ji-hee.
Thank you.
And Im Sa-young.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.
Generation.